Every 4 years, something interesting happens to the world. Offices empty out mid-afternoon, grown adults cry in public, and nobody thinks it's strange. Your neighbor, the quiet one you've never actually spoken to, is suddenly outside screaming at a screen, wearing a jersey you've never seen before. The World Cup arrives, and it feels like the entire planet tilts on its axis toward one thing. And then there's you. Maybe you smiled politely when your coworker explained the offside rule for the third time. Maybe you genuinely tried to watch a match and found your brain quietly drifting toward literally anything else. Maybe you feel this low-grade guilt, like you're missing a frequency everyone else can hear, like there's a party happening inside a building you can't find the door to. Here's what I want to tell you today. That's not a flaw. That's actually your psychology doing something really specific, really intentional. And once you understand what's happening inside your brain during those moments, you'll never feel weird about it again. Let's start with something called identity-based motivation. Psychologist Dan McAdams spent decades studying how human beings construct what he called their personal narrative, the internal story you tell yourself about who you are. And here's the thing about that story. Your brain is fiercely protective of it. When something doesn't fit your self-narrative, your mind doesn't just ignore it, it actively resists it. So if your story has never included passionate sports fan, your brain registers the World Cup noise the way it registers a song playing in a language you don't speak. Technically audible, emotionally, nothing. This isn't indifference, this is identity coherence. Your brain is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. But wait, why do other people care so intensely? That's where it gets even more fascinating. In 1979, social psychologist Henry Tigel introduced what he called social identity theory. The idea is simple but profound. Humans don't just belong to groups, they become groups. When your national team scores, your brain registers a neurological reward similar to personal achievement. Your fans aren't just watching athletes, they are, in a very real psychological sense, playing. The team's victory is their victory. Their brain literally cannot tell the difference between we won and I won. Now here's what this means for you, the person who doesn't feel any of that. You're not broken. You simply haven't merged your identity with a collective sporting narrative. And that's rarer than people think, and more psychologically interesting than people give credit for. Think about the concept of psychological absorption. Some people can completely lose themselves in a football match, the same way others lose themselves in a novel, a piece of music, or a long walk through a city they've never been to before. We all have domains where absorption happens naturally. For you, it might be cinema, or cooking, or architecture, or the kind of conversation that goes 3 hours past midnight and you don't notice. The capacity for deep engagement isn't missing in you, it's just pointed somewhere else, and your brain, quietly and without your permission, made that choice a long time ago. There's also something worth understanding about cortisol and collective emotion. Large-scale sporting events generate what researchers call emotional contagion, the automatic, largely unconscious mimicking of the emotions around us. Most people get swept into the World Cup not because they independently decided to care, but because caring became the social default. Humans are deeply wired for belonging, and belonging often means feeling what the crowd feels. The people around you aren't always passionate about football. Sometimes they're just really good at being human in groups. You, interestingly, might have a slightly higher resistance to that pull. Psychologists have studied a trait called need for uniqueness, a stable personality tendency to prefer differentiation from the crowd. People high in this trait don't rebel against norms for the sake of it. They simply feel more authentic when their interests and responses are genuinely their own, rather than borrowed from the surrounding atmosphere. If that sounds familiar, it might explain a lot. Not just about the World Cup, but about a dozen other moments in your life where everyone zoomed left and you quietly, calmly stayed put. And let's be honest about something. There's a particular kind of loneliness in that, isn't there? Not a tragic loneliness, more like standing on a slightly different hill than everyone else, looking at the same sky, but from your own angle. During the World Cup, group bonding is happening all around you, and even if you don't want to join it, you can feel the edges of it. That's worth naming.
Social exclusion, even voluntary social exclusion, activates the same neural pathways as mild physical discomfort. So if you've ever felt vaguely restless during a World Cup month, it's not because you secretly care about penalty kicks. It's because you're human, and humans are wired to notice when the tribe has gathered without them. But here's where I want to leave you. The people who don't follow the World Cup tend to be people who've built a very personal relationship with what actually moves them. Not what's supposed to move them, not what moves everyone around them, what actually, genuinely lands. That's a form of self-knowledge that takes most people years to develop, and some people never develop at all. You already know the difference between performed enthusiasm and real resonance. That's not nothing. That's actually everything. The World Cup is a beautiful thing. The collective joy of it, the shared grief, the improbable goals at the 90th minute. For the people inside that experience, it's genuinely transcendent. But transcendence doesn't only live in stadiums. It lives wherever you've quietly, persistently chosen to look for it. So the next time someone looks at you like you're a mystery for not knowing who's in the semifinals, just smile. You're not missing something. You're saving yourself for what actually fits. I'd love to know, what's your version of the World Cup? The thing that absorbs you completely while the rest of the world is looking somewhere else? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one.